April 11, 2012. A white Lexus sat abandoned in one of Dubai's most expensive neighborhoods. The keys were still in the ignition. The driver's purse lay untouched on the passenger seat. But the woman who owned this car had vanished without a trace. 3 children waited at their school gate that afternoon, watching other kids get picked up one by one. Their mother never came. She would never come again. The missing woman was Huda Rahmani, a 33-year-old single mother who had been born and raised in Dubai. She had watched this desert city transform into a glittering metropolis of impossible towers and artificial islands. But in 2012, Dubai was still healing from the 2008 financial crisis. Construction cranes stood frozen like metal skeletons against the sky. Many expatriate families had packed up and left. Those who stayed often struggled to make ends meet. Huda was one of them. After a bitter divorce 2 years earlier, she found herself raising 3 children alone. Her ex-husband had returned to Jordan, leaving her with no support and very little money. Every morning at 7, she would bundle her kids into a taxi and drop them at school in Al Walker. Then she would take the bus to her job at Premium Auto Emirates, a luxury car dealership in Al Quoz. She was one of only 2 women working in sales there, which made her both valuable and vulnerable. Her apartment was small and simple. 2 bedrooms for 4 people. No internet connection because she couldn't afford it. Just a single landline phone that she used to stay in touch with her sister and a few close friends. Her Samsung phone was basic too. It could make calls and send text messages, but nothing more. This was 2012, before smartphones became common in Dubai. Most people still carried simple phones and communicated the old-fashioned way. Huda was beautiful and intelligent, but life had made her careful. She dressed conservatively for work and kept to herself. Her colleagues respected her because she spoke perfect Arabic and English, and she could handle the wealthy Emirati customers better than most of the male salespeople. She knew how to be polite but firm, respectful but not submissive. This was important in a business where traditional men came to spend hundreds of thousands of dirhams on cars. The children were her whole world. 6-year-old Omar was the baby, always clinging to her abaya when she picked him up from school. 9-year-old Layla was the responsible one, helping her younger brothers with homework while Huda worked late. 12-year-old Ahmed was becoming a man too quickly, trying to protect his mother from the bills and stress that kept her awake at night. They lived simply but they were happy, until everything changed. September 15, 2012. That was the day Zahir Al-Falasi walked into the dealership. Huda was arranging paperwork when she heard the commotion near the entrance. The other salespeople were suddenly standing straighter, adjusting their ties, speaking in hushed tones. This could only mean one thing: a very important customer had arrived. Zahir was 55 years old and carried himself like a man who had never been told no. He wore a perfectly pressed kandjara and expensive leather shoes. His beard was trimmed with precision, and his eyes missed nothing as they swept across the showroom. Behind him came 2 younger men in dark suits, clearly security or assistants. This was how the very wealthy moved through Dubai, with an entourage that announced their importance before they even spoke. He stopped in front of a limited edition Aston Martin DBS. The price tag read 850,000 dirhams, more money than Huda made in 5 years. But Zahir looked at it the way most people looked at a cup of coffee, something small and affordable. The showroom manager rushed over, bowing slightly and speaking in rapid Arabic. But Zahir raised one hand and pointed directly at Huda. He pointed directly at Huda and demanded she handle his inquiry. His voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed instantly. Huda felt every eye in the showroom turn to her. This was unusual. Important Emirati men typically preferred to deal with other men, especially for such expensive purchases. But she walked over professionally, carrying her folder of specifications and financing options. She had handled VIP customers before, though none quite this intimidating. She introduced herself in perfect Arabic, keeping her voice steady despite feeling nervous. Zahir studied her for a long moment. Later, her colleagues would say there was something in that look, an intensity that seemed to see right through her professional facade to the struggling single mother beneath. He smiled, but it wasn't entirely friendly. He requested detailed information about the Aston Martin, switching to English and making it clear he wanted to test her knowledge. For the next hour, Huda explained every detail. The engine specifications, the leather options, the custom paint choices. Zahir listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking technical questions that tested her expertise. She answered everything perfectly, drawing on months of studying these cars that she could never afford to own. When she finished, Zahir was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out an expensive pen and wrote something on a piece of heavy paper. He folded it carefully and handed it to her, instructing her to call him the next day to discuss the matter further. That night, lying in her small bed while her children slept nearby, Huda stared at the piece of paper. She had no idea that this simple introduction would lead to 8 months of luxury, lies, and ultimately, her complete disappearance from the world. The paper, aware that everyone was staring at her. When she unfolded it later, she found his personal phone number written in elegant handwriting, along with 5 words that would change everything. "You impressed me today. Call me." That night, lying in her small bed while her children slept nearby, Huda stared at the piece of paper. She had no idea that this simple introduction would lead to 8 months of luxury, lies, and ultimately, her complete disappearance from the world. The next morning, Huda sat in the dealership's break room during her lunch hour, turning the expensive paper over and over in her hands. Her colleague Fatima noticed her distraction and asked what was wrong. Huda showed her the handwritten note, and Fatima's eyes widened. Everyone in Dubai knew the Al-Falasi name. They owned half the luxury car dealerships in the Emirates and had fingers in construction, real estate, and shipping. Zahir Al-Falasi was not just wealthy. He was connected to the kind of power that could change lives with a single phone call. Fatima warned her to be careful. Rich Emirati men didn't usually pursue single mothers without expecting something in return. But Huda was already calculating in her head. Her rent had just increased by 30%. The children's school fees were due in 2 weeks. Her old Toyota had been making strange noises for months, and she couldn't afford repairs. Maybe one dinner wouldn't hurt. Maybe he just wanted to discuss business. Maybe she was overthinking everything. That evening, after the children were asleep, Huda called the number. Zahir answered on the first ring, as if he had been waiting. His voice was warm and friendly, completely different from the intimidating businessman who had dominated her showroom. He invited her to dinner at Al Mahara, the underwater restaurant at Burj Al Arab. Huda had only seen this place in magazines. It was where celebrities and royalty dined among sharks and stingray behind massive glass walls. The cost of one meal there was more than her monthly salary. She told him she needed to think about it. Zahir was patient but persistent. He understood she was a working mother with responsibilities. He respected that. In fact, he found it admirable how she had built a career in a difficult industry while raising 3 children alone. His words were carefully chosen, designed to make her feel seen and valued in a way she hadn't experienced since her divorce. 2 days later, Huda found herself standing in front of her small wardrobe, trying to find something appropriate for the most expensive restaurant in Dubai. She had nothing suitable. Her sister Mariam arrived with a borrowed black dress and helped her get ready. As Huda looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the elegant woman staring back. For the first time in years, she felt beautiful instead of just tired. Zahir sent a driver to collect her in a black Mercedes. The hotel staff at Burj Al Arab treated her like royalty because she was his guest. The underwater dining room was even more spectacular than the pictures. Fish swam past their table while they ate courses Huda couldn't pronounce from menus without prices. Zahir was charming and attentive, asking about her children, her dreams, her opinions on everything from Dubai's development to her favorite books. He told her about his own story. Born into a traditional family, he had built his business empire through hard work and smart investments. He had been married twice, but both wives had wanted only his money, not him as a person. He was lonely despite his success. When he looked at Huda, he saw something genuine that was missing from his world of superficial relationships and business transactions. The evening felt like a fairy tale. Zahir was intelligent and well-traveled. He spoke about art and literature, about his plans to expand his business into Asia, about his love for falconry and traditional Emirati culture. He was nothing like the demanding customer who had intimidated her at the dealership. This was a different man entirely, thoughtful, respectful, even vulnerable as he shared his personal struggles. When the driver brought her home, Zahir walked her to the door of her building. He didn't try to kiss her or invite himself inside. Instead, he thanked her for a wonderful evening and asked if he could see her again. Huda found herself saying yes before she had time to think about the complications this might create. Over the next 2 weeks, the gifts began arriving. Not jewelry or expensive items that might seem inappropriate, but thoughtful presents that showed he had been listening during their dinner. Books by authors she had mentioned enjoying. High-quality art supplies for her daughter who loved to draw. A beautiful leather-bound journal with her name embossed in gold letters. Each gift came with a handwritten note in his elegant script. Then came the practical help. Huda's Toyota finally broke down completely, leaving her stranded at work one evening. When she called her sister for help, she discovered that Zahir had already arranged for a tow truck and a rental car. The next day, he called to check if she was managing without her vehicle. His concern seemed genuine, not calculated. When she mentioned the expensive repairs needed, he offered to handle them as a loan that she could pay back slowly. Huda was overwhelmed by his generosity. No one had taken care of her like this since her father died when she was 20. The feeling of being protected and provided for was intoxicating after years of struggling alone. When Zahir invited her to see his penthouse apartment, she agreed without the hesitation she might have felt weeks earlier. The apartment was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Dubai Marina and the Persian Gulf. The furniture was imported from Italy, the artwork from galleries in London and New York. But what impressed Huda most was how clean and organized everything was. This wasn't the bachelor pad of a playboy but the home of a man who valued quality and order in his life. Zahir cooked dinner for her himself, something simple but perfectly prepared. They sat on his terrace under the stars, talking until the early hours of the morning. When he finally drove her home, Huda realized that somewhere during the evening, this had stopped being about financial desperation and started being about genuine attraction. She was falling for him, despite all her practical reasons for keeping her distance. But there were warning signs she chose to ignore. The way his staff seemed afraid of him when they thought he wasn't looking. The expensive security system in his building that required multiple checkpoints to reach his floor. The phone calls he took in other rooms, speaking in hushed tones about problems that needed to be solved quietly. Most telling was how he never wanted to meet in public places where they might be photographed together. By December 2012, their relationship had settled into a routine that felt comfortable but secretive. Tuesday and Thursday evenings at his penthouse. Expensive dinners at private clubs where discretion was guaranteed. Weekend trips to his beach house in Fujairah when her sister could watch the children. Zahir was generous with money for her family's needs, but always in ways that seemed like gifts rather than payments. He was transforming her life, and Huda was grateful beyond words. What she didn't realize was that Zahir was also studying her, learning her weaknesses and dependencies. Every gift was designed to make her more reliant on his generosity. Every moment of luxury was carefully calculated to make her ordinary life seem impossibly dull by comparison. He was creating a beautiful prison, and Huda was walking into it willingly, one expensive gift at a time. By January 2013, Huda had become completely obsessed with Zahir Al-Falasi. What started as gratitude for his generosity had transformed into something much deeper and more dangerous. She spent hours each day thinking about him, planning their future together, and imagining herself as his wife. The expensive gifts he showered on her family only strengthened her belief that he was preparing to make their relationship permanent. Her children now attended Dubai International Academy, their fees paid in full for the entire year. The family had moved to a luxurious apartment in Jumeirah Beach residence with stunning sea views. Huda drove a brand new BMW that appeared in her parking space one morning with a note about keeping her safe. Every gesture convinced her that Zahir was building toward a marriage proposal. Huda began researching everything about Emirati wedding traditions. She studied the proper protocols for meeting his family and learned about the cultural expectations for becoming an Emirati man's wife. In her mind, she was already planning their engagement party and designing her wedding dress. She even started taking Arabic calligraphy classes, thinking it would impress his traditional relatives when they eventually met. But Zahir's behavior became increasingly controlling. He monitored her phone calls and tracked her movements through GPS software installed on her Samsung. When she questioned this surveillance, he explained it was for her protection. Dubai was dangerous for women associated with wealthy men, he said. The tracking was necessary to keep her safe from kidnappers and criminals who might target her. Huda accepted these explanations because she was desperately in love. She ignored the warning signs that her sister Mariam pointed out during their increasingly rare conversations. The isolation didn't matter because Zahir was her whole world now. She stopped socializing with colleagues from the dealership and avoided family gatherings that might interfere with his unpredictable schedule. Her obsession deepened when she found photographs of other women in Zahir's desk drawer. Instead of seeing them as a red flag, Huda convinced herself they were evidence of his past loneliness. These women had obviously failed to understand him the way she did. They weren't worthy of his love and commitment. She was different, she told herself. She would be the one who finally captured his heart completely. The breaking point came in March when Zahir introduced her to Katerina, a 22-year-old Russian model working in Dubai's fashion industry. Huda watched in horror as Zahir's attention focused entirely on this stunning blonde woman. During dinner, he treated Huda like a business associate while gazing at Katerina with the same intensity he had once shown her. That night, Huda confronted Zahir about the young model. She demanded to know his intentions and reminded him of everything they had built together over 8 months. Her children loved him, she said. She had restructured her entire life around their relationship. She had assumed they were moving toward marriage, and she needed to know where she stood. Zahir's response shattered her romantic delusions. He explained coldly that their arrangement had always been temporary. He was a successful businessman who enjoyed the company of beautiful women, but he had never promised marriage or permanent commitment. Everything he had given her family was generosity, not an investment in their future together. Huda's love turned to rage in that moment. She realized she had been used and discarded like a temporary entertainment. Her children had grown attached to a man who planned to abandon them. Her family's improved lifestyle was built on lies and false promises. The obsessive love she felt transformed into an equally obsessive need for revenge. She began secretly collecting evidence against Zahir, using her access to his penthouse and business meetings. Her Samsung phone became a recording device for capturing his private conversations. She photographed documents left on his desk and memorized details about suspicious financial transactions. Most importantly, she started keeping written records of everything, hiding these notes in her children's schoolbooks. The evidence revealed that Zahir's business empire involved more than luxury cars. There were questionable financial transfers and references to permits obtained through unofficial channels. Most disturbing were recorded conversations where he discussed previous women who had caused problems and how those situations had been permanently resolved. Huda confided everything to her sister Mariam, making her promise to give the evidence to police if anything happened. Mariam begged her to walk away quietly, but Huda's obsession had shifted from love to vengeance. She was determined to expose Zahir before he could hurt anyone else. By early April, Huda had collected enough material to destroy Zahir's reputation. But she also noticed increased surveillance. His security team monitored her movements constantly, and her communications were being tracked in real time. The woman who had once dreamed of becoming his wife was now trapped in a deadly game where the stakes were much higher than a broken heart. Her obsessive love had evolved into an equally dangerous obsession with bringing him down, and Zahir was beginning to see her as a serious threat that required permanent solutions. By April 2013, Zahir had discovered Huda's evidence collection through his surveillance network. His security team reported that she had been recording conversations, photographing documents, and meeting secretly with her sister to share information. What he found most threatening was her written journal detailing his business activities and the suspicious disappearances of previous women in his life. One evening in early April, Zahir confronted Huda directly about her activities. His voice was calm, but his eyes held a coldness that made her blood freeze. He knew about the recordings hidden in her apartment. He knew about the photographs she had taken of his financial documents. Most dangerously, he knew about her plans to expose him to the media and police authorities. Zahir explained the reality of their situation with chilling clarity. In 2012 Dubai, money could make anyone disappear without a digital trace. The city's surveillance systems were still basic, social media was limited, and his connections reached into every level of government and law enforcement. He had handled similar problems before, and those women had simply vanished from public records as if they had never existed. He offered Huda one final choice. She could destroy all evidence, sign documents transferring custody of her children to their father's family in Jordan, and relocate quietly to another country with a generous financial settlement. Or she could continue her rebellion and face the consequences that had befallen the other women who had threatened his reputation and business empire. Huda refused his ultimatum. Her obsessive love had transformed into an equally obsessive need for justice. She would not be silenced or bought off like his previous victims. She had spent months collecting evidence that could destroy him, and she intended to use every piece of it. Her children deserved to know the truth about the man who had pretended to care for them. This defiance sealed her fate. Zahir made his decision with the cold calculation of a businessman solving a problem. He arranged one final meeting where they could discuss terms privately. He suggested his compound in Nad Al-Sheba, away from the busy areas of Dubai where their conversation might be overheard or recorded by security cameras. April 11, 2013, unfolded as Huda's last day of life. She woke early and prepared breakfast for her children with unusual care, memorizing their sleepy faces and morning routines. She took them to school by taxi instead of using her BMW, hugging each child longer than normal and whispering words of love that they would later remember as their final conversation with their mother. At the dealership, Huda's colleagues noticed her distraction and anxiety. She checked her basic Nokia phone constantly and seemed unable to concentrate on customer inquiries or paperwork. During lunch break, she called her sister Mariam from the office landline to confirm their emergency plan. If anything happened during the evening meeting, Mariam would immediately contact police and deliver copies of all evidence to local media outlets. After work, Huda returned to her JBR apartment and spent an hour writing individual letters to her children. She explained that she loved them more than life itself and that everything she was doing was to protect other families from the man who had deceived them all. She sealed these letters in envelopes marked with each child's name and left them hidden in her bedroom drawer. She changed into her most conservative black abaya, covering herself completely as a sign of respect for what she believed would be a serious business negotiation. At 9:30 p.m., she left the apartment complex in her white Lexus, driving toward what she thought would be her final confrontation with Zahir Al-Falasi. Basic traffic cameras captured her vehicle leaving Al-Walker at 9:47 p.m., heading toward the exclusive Nad Al-Sheba area where wealthy Emiratis maintained private compounds away from public scrutiny. Limited security footage showed her Lexus entering the gated community at 10:23 p.m. After that moment, her movements became untraceable due to the absence of GPS technology in her car and the limited surveillance systems of 2012 Dubai. The next morning, when Huda failed to appear at her children's school for pickup, panic began to set in. Her sister Mariam conducted a desperate grid search of the areas where Huda might have gone. She found the abandoned white Lexus outside the Nad Al-Sheba compound with keys still in the ignition and Huda's purse untouched on the passenger seat. Mariam immediately contacted Dubai police, but their response reflected the limitations and biases of 2012 law enforcement. They treated the case as a domestic dispute rather than a serious crime, suggesting that Huda had probably left voluntarily after an argument with her boyfriend. When Mariam mentioned Zahir's name, the officers became noticeably less cooperative and advised her to be careful about making accusations against respected businessmen. The physical evidence disappeared quickly and efficiently. Huda's Nokia phone was found smashed behind a dumpster 1 kilometer from the compound, with the SIM card completely missing. The compound's VHS security system mysteriously malfunctioned, leaving no record of what happened after her car entered the property. Zahir provided a perfect alibi through multiple witnesses who confirmed he was attending a business dinner at Atlantis Hotel during the entire evening. The cover-up operated with the efficiency of a well-rehearsed plan. Dubai police classified the case as an unresolved voluntary disappearance within 15 days, despite Mariam's protests and the evidence she tried to present. Local newspapers Gulf News and Khaleej Times declined to cover what they called a private family matter. Legal obstacles emerged as lawyers throughout Dubai refused to take the case, citing insufficient evidence and the dangers of challenging influential Emirati businessmen. Under 2012 UAE law, custody of Huda's 3 children automatically transferred to their father's relatives in Jordan. The kids lost both their mother and their improved lifestyle in Dubai, returning to a life of poverty and uncertainty. Zahir's public response was carefully managed through expensive London PR consultants who issued statements expressing concern for Huda's well-being while suggesting she had been emotionally unstable following their relationship's end. Within 3 weeks, Zahir appeared publicly with Katerina, the Russian model, at Dubai Fashion Week. The message was clear to anyone paying attention. Life had moved on, and there would be no consequences for whatever had happened to Huda Rahmani. In 2012 Dubai, money and influence could indeed make anyone disappear without leaving a digital trace behind. Many years have passed since Huda Rahmani disappeared in Dubai, and her case remains officially closed as an unresolved voluntary disappearance. The file sits in a dusty cabinet somewhere in Dubai police headquarters, forgotten by everyone except her sister Mariam, who continues to search for answers that may never come. In the months following Huda's disappearance, Mariam tried desperately to keep the case alive. She distributed copies of Huda's recordings to local Arabic radio stations, hoping someone would broadcast the evidence her sister had died collecting. Initially, a few stations showed interest in the story of a missing single mother and her wealthy businessman boyfriend. But within days, government pressure forced them to stop all coverage. The recordings disappeared from their archives, and station managers claimed they had never received any evidence. Meanwhile, Zahir Al-Falasi's life continued without any consequences. His relationship with Katerina, the Russian model, lasted 18 months before she too disappeared from Dubai's social scene. Unlike Huda, Katerina simply stopped appearing at fashion events and modeling assignments. Her friends claimed she had returned to Moscow for family reasons, but no one could provide contact information or confirm her location. The pattern became clearer when investigators began connecting Huda's case to other missing women throughout the Gulf region. Between 2008 and 2015, at least 6 women associated with wealthy Gulf businessmen had vanished under similar circumstances. All were educated, independent, and had threatened to expose uncomfortable truths about their powerful boyfriends. All had disappeared after being offered ultimatums to relocate quietly or face serious consequences. But proving these connections was impossible in the pre-digital era. Police departments across different countries didn't share information effectively. Missing person databases were local rather than international. Without smartphone tracking, social media presence, or cloud storage of evidence, these women simply vanished as if they had never existed. Their families were left with questions but no resources to find answers. Huda's 3 children faced the harshest consequences of her disappearance. Taken to Jordan by their father's relatives, they struggled to adjust to a life of poverty after months of luxury in Dubai. 12-year-old Ahmed became the family's protector, working part-time jobs to help support his younger siblings. 9-year-old Layla developed anxiety and nightmares about her mother's fate. 6-year-old Omar gradually forgot details about Huda's face and voice, leaving him with only fragments of memories from his early childhood. The psychological impact on these children was devastating. They had no closure about their mother's fate, no explanation for why she had abandoned them, and no hope that she might return. Well-meaning relatives told them that Huda had probably started a new life somewhere else, but the children sensed the adults didn't believe these comforting lies either. By 2020, technology had evolved enough that similar crimes would be much harder to cover up. Smartphone GPS tracking, social media presence, cloud storage, and international databases would have made Huda's disappearance a global news story within hours. Her evidence against Zahir would have been automatically backed up to secure servers. Her location would have been traceable until the moment her phone was destroyed. Her story would have spread across social platforms faster than any government could contain it. But in 2013, these protections didn't exist. Huda disappeared into a digital black hole where wealthy men could still make problems vanish through money, influence, and carefully managed silence. Her case serves as a reminder of how vulnerable people were in the years before technology democratized information and made cover-ups nearly impossible. Today, Zahir Al-Falasi remains one of Dubai's most successful businessmen. His automotive empire has expanded into renewable energy and smart city technology. He appears regularly at government functions and economic forums, speaking about Dubai's bright future and his role in building a more progressive society. He has never been questioned about any missing women, and his business reputation remains spotless. The compound in Nad Al-Sheba where Huda was last seen has been demolished and replaced with a luxury shopping center. The VHS security system that mysteriously malfunctioned has been replaced by digital cameras that store footage in multiple locations. The Dubai police have modernized their missing person protocols and now take disappearances more seriously regardless of the social status of those involved. But these improvements came too late for Huda Rahmani and the other women who vanished during Dubai's transition from desert outpost to global metropolis. Their stories remain buried in pre-digital archives, forgotten by everyone except the families who still wait for answers that will probably never come. Mariam still lives in Dubai, now working as a teacher and raising her own children in the same neighborhoods where her sister once lived. Sometimes she drives past the JBR apartment building where Huda spent her final months, or the dealership where she met Zahir Al-Falasi. The city has changed dramatically since 2013, with new towers and attractions that have erased most traces of the Dubai her sister knew. On April 11th each year, Mariam visits the mosque to pray for her sister's soul and to ask for justice that has never come. She keeps copies of Huda's evidence in a safety deposit box, hoping that someday the world will be ready to hear the truth about what happened to a single mother who loved too deeply and fought too hard against a system designed to protect men like Zahir Al-Falasi. The answer to what really happened that night in Nad Al-Sheba compound died with Huda Rahmani. But her story serves as a warning about the price of speaking truth to power in a world where money can still make inconvenient people disappear without a trace.